Right, so networking. This is linked to this whole kind of pre-application stage, really gearing up to be able to give a genuine reason of why you want to work for that firm, whether it's for the cover letter, or even if that firm doesn't have a cover letter, even if they don't really specifically ask you for why that firm, when you go for that interview, they're bound to ask you this. Whether it's at the interview or the assessment centre, you're going to be ready, and you're going to be ready not just for any old answer that you've found on the web, but an answer that is genuine and authentic to you. So, how should you do this? The secret is very simple. You talk to people. People have genuine, authentic responses that are not going to be found on the web. And the way you do that is you network. So, I'm not going to keep any secrets, but when I first began with this process, I was very intimidated by the idea of networking. Like, I would just have these visions of calling up people that were just like much more superior to me, and I would just like run out of questions to ask, and they'd be like, why are you even calling me? Why are you wasting my time? And maybe even that would backfire, and they would go and tell HR, that they shouldn't pick me. Well, that's complete like rubbish. That probably won't happen. And there are also a few hacks and tactics that can really, really quick tactics that can really leverage and improve your networking experience and your networking pursuits. But the biggest thing is that with consistency, as with everything in this game plan, in this process, and also with a bit of patience, you're going to be getting really familiar with this process. And it's probably one of the single biggest tactics and overlooked tactics that could be the difference between you getting the internship or not for a particular company. It could just be one connection, one set of insights. So let's begin. How should you even go about networking? I would say kind of being a bit organized with it. This isn't hunting, this is kind of more farming, nurturing those relationships. But I would say a bit of organization does help. And for me, that meant, having a little kind of spreadsheet with all the different, and this could be the same as your kind of application tracker, in which you tailor to your needs. For me, it looked like having the firms down on one column, and then also having like details about the opening date and various other details. And then one of the additional columns would be people I've reached out to, and I would have all those different firms kind of order it in terms of which firms are going to probably open soonest. So for example, I knew that Goldman Sachs were the first to open, JP Morgan a bit later. You also have other companies like maybe Bank of America open mid-August, and then a lot of companies say, I don't know, UBS and HSBC kind of end of August. This does change year on year, and obviously with last year having COVID, that kind of interrupted the timeline a little bit. But essentially a lot of the boutiques might open a little bit later, so I kind of left them a little bit later. But at the end of the day, like, you should be able to get this process done in a month, in a couple of months. That should be enough. So once you've made that list, you then want to reach out on LinkedIn. So some people say emailing is good. I kind of like the idea of LinkedIn just because you have your picture attached to that. Sometimes people are just their inboxes are probably bombarded by information from their team, from their colleagues, and it's probably quite hard to get their emails. I know you have to kind of do a bit of guessing, and you don't even know if that's gone through or not. So I just stick to LinkedIn. That seemed to work very well for me. It's a really nice way of tracking it as well, in terms of seeing, okay, I've got mutual connections here. I can like leverage that. So once you go onto LinkedIn, you choose one of those firms. Let's just say it's one of the bigger banks, for example. You then, in your kind of message, your LinkedIn message, when you send a request, you can add a note. You've probably seen this. You can add a note up to 300 characters. It's not much at all, but it's more than enough. And if it's going to be anything more than 300 characters, there's a lot of chance it's going to dissuade anyone to actually read it if they're that busy and they're someone, you're someone they haven't met before. And then in that message, you really want to craft a quick, short, concise, like, proposal for a 10-minute call. And this is what I usually go for. So I would usually say, and this is reusable. Anyone can use this. It just seems to work every time. It's again like that CV. It's one of those cookie cutter kind of templates that will just really help you speed up that process of getting to someone that can really, you can build that friendship with. You can really get some insights and learn from their experience. So I'd say, dear/hello, depending on how formal you want to be, their name, their first name usually I'll just go for. I'm a first or second year at, and then whatever university, so I'll just give it as an example of how I do it. So I'm a second year at the University of Warwick studying economics, and I'd really like to hear about your experience at the company. So maybe it's a bulge bracket, maybe it's a boutique, you just name that company. Would it be possible to arrange a quick call? I know you're really busy, but even a 1 or 2 line reply would really make my day. Many thanks, and then your name. I would actually even suggest tweaking that a little bit if you want. You could even say, would you be would it be possible to arrange a quick 10-minute call? 10 minutes is usually the kind of Goldilocks zone to show that you're serious about getting their insights, but that you really respect their time. You don't have to include that last bit about even a 1 or 2 line reply would really make my day, and I know you're really busy. That's actually taken from Tim Ferriss. I didn't make that, I didn't create that. That seems to be just a really effective way of, again, respecting someone else's schedule and their business, but also really kind of showing that appreciation and approaching it in a very friendly tone. So that's the kind of mechanism of networking. You have your spreadsheet, you go onto LinkedIn, you send that template, that message, and you wait, and you've planted the seeds, you let them sprout, and you're going to get essentially a few calls from that. In terms of numbers, this is a numbers game, and you can't really get bitter about people ignoring you. Some people are just really busy. In fact, some people, maybe when I contacted them, they weren't busy at all and they were able to arrange a call within the day. And then maybe the next year I contact them and I don't hear anything because they're busy, and you've got to respect that. Generally people are very nice, they want to help, and it's just sometimes with the workload and the timings they're not able to. So with that, I would suggest probably going for at least 5, maybe around 10 is a good number to go for that initial reaching out. You don't want to overload it, otherwise you're gonna have calls left, right, and centre. But I usually found a 20% hit rate. So for every 5 I sent out, about 1 replied, and that seemed to work really well on LinkedIn. Then once you actually have that kind of processing gear, you're consistently reaching out to people, you're organising those calls. What you also want to do is kind of bear in mind a couple of things. One is not to just go for people that are alumni of your university. In fact, some of the best calls I had were with alumni. Some of them weren't. Some of them were actually universities that maybe one wouldn't consider typical of having waves of people going into investment banking. That doesn't matter. In fact, that can sometimes be an advantage, because sometimes it means you're going to get a much more authentic response. Sometimes it means that they haven't already been bombarded by people who are trying to network in that way. So keep your mind open. And the other thing is, I'd take a bit of a shopping list almost to this kind of networking call, especially for the first few you do. You might get nervous, you're going to run out of things to say, especially maybe if you're not as talkative or just as extroverted as maybe some other people. So I would take a list. It doesn't have to be something complex, it can be something very simple, such as kind of like the simple questions of, okay, so you're going to introduce yourself at the beginning, as per usual. That's kind of like a polite thing to do, and then you might ask about their experiences. So what got you here? What got you to that position? And then you go through in more depth. You say, right, okay, so what led you to that team? Why did you choose that team? Why did you choose that sector within investment banking to focus on? What did you do for your internship? Or where did you get an internship? Why did you stay? Why didn't you stay? And you see how, again, very simple kind of tailoring and pivots, such as using the what, when, where, and why. Just adding that and digging deeper into their responses will really help you get a much more fruitful conversation. They should be doing most of the speaking here. It's not you doing the speaking. You should be pitching in and kind of talking about your experiences, maybe how you resonate with something they talk about. It should be conversing. It shouldn't be scripted. But just having those few questions and those few frameworks in mind that you can go down, whether it's also kind of going on a bit of a tangent and asking, okay, what's your favourite experience at the firm? What's your favourite deal you've worked on? What's the most challenging thing you've worked on? And what's the buddy system like? What's the training like at the firm? Maybe kind of like asking about the mechanics of how the teams are structured and how that's different to other companies. Maybe why the firm, rather than saying, okay, why did you choose this firm, like you are the interviewer, like being intrigued, saying, I don't know if you've have friends in other firms, like what do you think makes this firm different? And again, that's going to really provide fuel for your cover letter, for your interview responses. So that should kind of really take you to that next level and help you build that competitive edge. I cannot recommend networking enough. It does feel uncomfortable at the beginning, but look, in the industry, you're going to be talking to people you've never met before, and you're going to have to talk with confidence, and it's something you're going to have to get used to. In the interview, that's what you're doing. It's a brilliant, fail-safe approach to kind of preparing you ahead of the application system. Like, what is the worst that can happen? And, in terms of who to reach out to, I would usually avoid HR because HR are usually bombarded by messages from applicants, and although HR work very, very hard on it and everything, like, it might sometimes feel like we're just a number, because there's so many of us, so many thousands of applicants. Whereas if you're targeting a specific analyst, someone who relates to you, who a few years ago was in exactly the same position, maybe someone you know from university or who was in the same societies as you, looking for those similarities, and maybe someone senior. Why does it have to be an analyst? Why does it have to be an associate? Why can't it be someone who's an MD? Usually MDs have a bit more time on their hands. So that's the managing director. So there's different kind of hierarchy within investment banking, and depending on how long people have been in the industry. And also, if you want to kind of find out more people to speak with, a nice line to include right at the end is saying, okay, look, based on my position, I'm applying to these internships. So you ask for your tips, you ask for the kind of strategy they employed, and then you also say, is there one or two kind of people that you recommend I reach out to, you think I could massively benefit from in terms of gaining insights to, and that's going to give you a really nice runway of people to contact. And look, this isn't just for the cover letter, this isn't just for the interview. I really recommend staying in touch with these people, even if it's just a message 6 months down the line. That could be a really strong relationship that you foster. Your network really is your net worth, and you're not just doing it to grow your net worth, but that just shows that it's one of the most valuable kind of things you can invest in that kind of friendship group and that network of people in the same industry that really are at a place further down the line that you eventually envision yourself to be in. So yeah, please do try that. That should massively increase your chances.